What is up guys, Delboy here. Just my quick prediction video for Dillian Whyte versus Robert Helenius. This fight goes down on the undercard of Anthony Joshua versus Kubrat Pulev. Let's briefly talk about both guys, their records, what they bring to the table, etc, etc. Dillian Whyte comes into this fight with a record of 21 wins, 1 defeat, 0 draw. 16 of those 21 wins coming by way of stoppage. Robert Helenius comes into this fight with a record of 25 wins, 1 defeat, 0 draws. 16 of those 25 wins coming by way of stoppage. If you look at both guys, Dillian Whyte is listed as 6'4" with a 78-inch reach, whereas Robert Helenius is listed as 6'6.5" with a 79-inch reach. So Helenius has a 1-inch reach advantage, and he is 2.5 inches taller. So he's the longer fighter. He's going to be the guy who is going to want to keep it on the outside, and that is essentially how Robert Helenius fights. He likes to stick behind that left jab and look for that right hand when possible. To me, this version of Robert Helenius is not what he was when he was on the come up a few years back. He obviously fought Chisora in 2011, and in that fight he sustained a hand injury, I believe, and since then he picked up loads more injuries, and he's just never really been that same fighter. On the come up, he was always fairly slow, he was always cumbersome, but he was a big guy who had good power and was a dangerous guy, you know. On the come up, he knocked out guys like Sam Peter, Lamont Brewster. I believe he knocked out Lyakovic as well. So he has some good scalps on the way up, you know, for a young pro or for a pro who had less than 20 fights. He has some good scalps. But after the Chisora fight where he sustained those injuries, he's never been the same fighter. So that is one big key factor here. The fact that Robert Helenius isn't what he was a few years back. And we saw that in his defeat to Johann Duhaupas, because although Helenius was always limited, I don't think he'd have lost to somebody like Duhaupas a few years back. I really don't. But that fight showed us where he's at. I think Helenius is a solid European level guy, you know, but he's never going to get past that level anymore. He's just not. And I think he'll be dangerous in the first 4 to 5 rounds when he's still quite fresh, when he carries that power. He's going to be dangerous at that stage because he does carry power still. I don't think he hits as hard as he did since his hand injuries, but he still carries power. And Dillian needs to be careful early on. Dillian can get reckless at times when he comes forward. He likes to come forward, pop that jab and go down to that body and try and break you down. That's his style. And in doing that, he does leave himself open. So he needs to be wary not to catch that right hand counter down a pipe. And also, he can't walk into too many jabs because Helenius' jab is fairly heavy-handed. It's not what it was a few years back again, but his jab is fairly good to begin with in the first few rounds. So the first 3 or 4 rounds, Dillian Whyte needs to be on his P's and Q's because all it takes is one shot, and Dillian, as much as I like him, defensively he is very open. And he needs to be wary not to walk onto something big early on. If Dillian can sort of play the first few rounds kind of in a conservative fashion, try not to force the openings, only take the openings when they come, don't get too reckless. If he sees out the first 3, 4, 5 rounds, I think at that stage he can start to break Helenius down, because since the Chisora fight, some of his comeback fights, his stamina has been very questionable. His first fight back after Chisora was against Sherman Williams. In that fight he gassed badly. Also, take a look at his 2015 European title fight against the German fighter Franz Riel. He started that fight really well, hurt Franz Riel several times, dropped him I believe as well, but Franz Riel was quite durable in that fight, and as it got to the later rounds, Helenius really started to flag, and he started to gas badly again. And obviously in his loss to Johann Duhaupas, as the fight he started quite well. But after the first few rounds, you know, he kind of flagged, and Duhaupas took him out in the mid rounds. So Helenius, to me, his gas tank is questionable. I think the injuries have taken a huge toll on his career. The power is not quite as apparent in that right hand as it once was. The jab is nowhere near as effective. I don't think Helenius is what he was. He's just not the same fighter. He's still dangerous at a certain level because he still does have some sort of power. He's a big guy, so he's obviously going to be dangerous at a certain level. But I think guys like Dillian Whyte who want to push onto the world level, they're going to beat Robert Helenius. And as long as Dillian is careful in the first 4 to 5 rounds, from that point onwards he'll take over. He'll start working that body. He'll start to let his hands go more, and he will take out Robert Helenius in the mid to late rounds. My prediction is a mid to late round stoppage for Dillian Whyte, though it will be interesting to see how Dillian Whyte reacts to Robert Helenius' power. If Helenius can sort of land a couple of shots, it'll be interesting to see how Dillian Whyte reacts to that. But yeah, I mean, I've got Dillian Whyte winning this fight by stoppage. Potentially, like I said, we could see a few early scares, but I expect Dillian Whyte to get through this relatively unscathed. But it is still a good test because Robert Helenius is a big guy. As I mentioned in my video when this fight got announced, Dillian needs some experience against those really tall big guys to prepare himself for a Wilder fight or Anthony Joshua rematch. He needs to fight with these big guys, you know, because since he lost to Anthony Joshua, he's not really been in there with any tall heavyweights. He fought Dave Allen, who's not that tall for a heavyweight. He fought Ian Lewison, who's not that tall. Chisora's not that tall. You know, he's not really been in with another big heavyweight since then. So that's going to be an interesting dynamic. You know, just the height and reach of Helenius. How does Dillian Whyte react to that? Interesting fight. I do think Robert Helenius has a slight puncher's chance, but I expect Dillian to get the job done here. What do you guys think? Peace.